Hey everybody, welcome back to the Introversion Podcast. It is a rainy Friday afternoon here in Philly where it's supposed to be always sunny, right? But alas, it's rainy, it's gloomy, it feels like a Sunday to me. It feels like a Sunday, like a lazy Sunday, where I'm feeling unmotivated and lethargic and just feel like lying on the couch, watching a movie under a blanket. And so that being said, here I am recording a solo episode and I'm trying to pick myself up and try something new today. The average length for a solo episode has been around maybe like 40 minutes to an hour, whereas guest episodes have ranged from about an hour and a half to 4 hours, my longest with my boy Tommy Danger. But I kind of want to try something a little different today in the sense of I want to focus very specifically on a very narrow sort of, well, it's not that narrow, but just a very specific topic or a specific idea that I have. So maybe this is perhaps how I should do all of my solo episodes instead of rambling on to a lot of different things. But for now, there's this sort of metaphor that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I haven't explicitly expressed it, but I want to do that today. So here goes. This is the first, if you want to call it an episodette, a little mini episode. We'll see if I can keep this under 20 minutes, maybe even under 15 minutes. I don't know. We'll see. So the name of the episode is Titanic. And just so you know, this episode is not about the movie at all. And it actually came up last night because I started to watch the movie kind of for research purposes. I wanted to see if I could glean some quote or some soundbite or whatever out of the movie to actually include it in this podcast episode today. But just as I was starting to watch it, I texted my friend Peter from my old college days at Northwestern. And he and I made a vow, I guess it was back in 1997, to never watch this movie till the day we die, right? So just as I was starting to watch this movie, I texted him and I was like, dude, do you remember that vow we made to never watch Titanic? I basically told him how I was about to watch the movie for research purposes for the podcast episode I was going to record. And his reply was literally, no, don't leave me. Don't leave me like this. I feel like this is major for us. And he made me pinky swear that I will continue to not ever watch this movie. So, I replied to him, all right, man, we will take this vow to the grave. So both Peter and I will never watch the movie Titanic. And we will always share that vow together and till the day we die. So that was a little sidebar there about the title of this episode. So Titanic, it's not about the movie. This is not a movie review or some thoughts after watching the movie, nothing like that. To get into the meat of this here, now, the point of this episode called Titanic and this metaphor that I want to talk about today. You might have noticed some of these themes throughout much of the podcast this year since May when I started it. But maybe it's been a bit subtle, so maybe some of you haven't noticed this. But I've had numerous conversations with my mom this year. Basically like the struggle is real on a day-to-day basis, like finding motivation, keeping your heart, your head out of the gutter, trying to remain positive, trying to not to get weighed down by the pandemic or, COVID deaths or COVID cases or wearing masks or BLM riots or police brutality or all this political shit happening constantly between Biden and Trump. And we all know what a shit show that first debate was. And just basically as I look at it, right, there's all this stuff happening out there in the world, or at least in America, right? And then there's the world beyond that. But I'm not even going to talk about the world out there beyond the United States. So let's just focus on my life here in America. And there's all this shit happening out there. And it's like to the extent that I allow it to penetrate my fortress of solitude here in my apartment, it adversely affects me. It brings me down. It stresses me out. It just depresses me and it keeps me from moving forward productively on my own stuff, right? And my mom has continually reminded me that you need to just blot all that out, all that stuff happening outside, out there. Blot it all out and just focus on your work and your own thing. And it's not even work, like paying work, client work. It's literally just like focus on your podcast, focus on your new website, focus on your logo design, focus on whatever these things are that you're doing, your personal passion projects or whatever. Focus on all that and forget about all that shit that's bringing you down out there in the world. Now, I would say that that's good advice, and I'm glad my mom is continually reminding me of that. But sort of a counterpoint to that I've made to her is this Titanic metaphor, which is what I'm about to get into. And imagine it's basically like the same advice to you. Have a great time, live your best life, like do your thing, and day by day enjoy it and all that. But basically have a great time partying and celebrating and working on your projects, doing whatever you want on the friggin' Titanic ship. Okay. And my point there is that there's this separation between your own personal life and what you're working on and what you're prioritizing. And Jordan Peterson talks a lot about, that whole thing about like make your bed, right?
Clean up your room. That's a good start. Organize your local landscape. Schedule your time. Start taking control of yourself.
So rather than going out there and trying to change the world and make the world a better place, you need to start by making your own personal world a better place. And it can start by literally just making your bed. Get your own finances in order. Get in shape. Eat right, clean your home, clean your apartment, whatever. So all of these things. And I love the logic of that is basically start locally, before you try to change the world. And what is the most local of starting locally? It's literally within the confines of your own home. And even that, the confines of your own body and your own mind, your own heart, and getting that all in order before you engage with the world and try to make change out there. So I love that logic. Like I'm on board with that. But this Titanic metaphor, it's literally like, yeah, but what's the point if you're doing a great job with your own stuff, but you're on the Titanic? And as we all know, that Titanic ship went down. And that is my metaphor these days that I struggle with, is that I look at society and I look at this election and I look at, the whole lesser of two evils thing. And this is exactly how I felt back in 2016. And back in 2016, I voted for Jill Stein, truth be told, and I got a lot of flack for that. Basically, my Hillary Clinton supporting friends got on my case saying, no, you can't vote for Jill Stein. That's a vote for Trump. And my Trump supporting friends got on my case and said, no, you can't vote for Jill Stein. That's a vote for Hillary Clinton. And I'm like, I couldn't get behind Hillary or Trump, and I voted for Jill Stein because I liked a lot of what she said and what she stood for. And I've said to people before, look, if she did nothing else but end the wars, bring troops home, cut all of this wartime military spending, and focus more on domestic policy and making the lives of American citizens better, for Americans to be healthier and happier and have more opportunity across the board, reduce police brutality and violence, like all these things that she talked about that I was on board. And I would say similarly about Tulsi Gabbard this year, but it's like these candidates, they never have a chance. And it blows my mind why the American people can't get behind a candidate who is actually positive and wanting to make this country a better place. It's because we're stuck in this two-party system with Hillary versus Trump or Trump versus Biden, and all of their corruption gets exposed, and yet people feel trapped. And they're like, well, don't vote for any other different one of these two terrible candidates because you're throwing your vote away.
Go ahead. Throw your vote away.
And with that mentality, I understand that by voting third party, my candidate's not going to win. But the way I've thought about it is, and I've said this before, is like I wish for all those people who feel disillusioned with the system, who hate the Democratic candidate and who hate the Republican candidate, and they just stay home and don't vote at all. If every one of those people, instead of just staying home and not voting, if they all went out and voted either Green Party or Libertarian, all of a sudden Green Party and Libertarian would have 10 to 15 to 20% of the vote, if not more. Literally, if everybody voted who was going to stay home, who was going to abstain from voting, it would be a massive turnout for third parties. And all of a sudden, in one election, that would be a game changer to wake everybody up and realize, oh, wow, look, if I didn't vote for this candidate, for this Democratic candidate who I can't stand, or this Republican candidate who I can't stand, and I actually voted for the candidate either in the Green Party or Libertarian Party or some other party that I really believe in, oh, maybe they might actually have a chance of winning. And we might have a chance at shaking up the system and bringing about actual real change, because I've said before, I'm jaded, I'm pessimistic, I'm whatever, but I voted for Obama in 2008, and I got swept up in the change you can believe in, and hope and all of that. And I really thought this outsider, Obama, would come in and things would be so much different and so much better, and we'd get rid of... we'd have campaign finance reform. We'd get money out of politics. And I just thought it would be so much better, all those promises and all that rhetoric. And, by 2012, I was pretty disillusioned. I still ended up voting for Obama, but I was losing a lot of faith at that point. And then come 2016, I was like, you know what? There's no way in hell I'm voting for Hillary. And at the same time, couldn't bring myself to vote for Trump either. So it was either I stay home or I vote third party, and I chose to vote third party. But here I go again. I'm going off on a tangent. I'm going to catch myself. I'm going to stop myself right there, because I might do a whole separate little mini episode on voting in general and the expectations of political parties and all that stuff. But for right now, part of the reason I'm bringing this up, though, is when I talk about Titanic, when I talk about the big ship that is American society, I think the political system in place is a huge part of the Titanic ship that is sinking, and also why it's very difficult to steer a large vessel in a different direction. I think on an individual basis, I think people can steer their lives in different directions, and they can make real changes in your eating habits and your exercise habits and in your location where you live and in the career field that you're in and all these things. Like, individual people can make big changes in life, but I feel like collectively as a society, the way things are structured, I just feel like, honestly, for a while now, I feel like whether you vote left or whether you vote right, and this is coming from a person who has voted both left and right in prior elections, and even third party in between, I've voted across the whole gambit, and I just feel like damned if you do, damned if you don't, And every election comes around and I just grow more and more disillusioned. And just look around at the country. People on the left hate people on the right, people on the right. I don't even think people on the right hate people on the left as much as people on the left hate people on the right. I'm sure there's cases on both sides, but most people I know are more left-leaning, and I'm talking about all my New York friends and California friends and all that. So there's that. But the few friends I have and family I have who are on the right, or at least right-leaning, they don't seem to hate the people on the left. And I think it's because they see things more how I see things, in the sense of like, look, I respect your right to have leftist views. I respect your right to have conservative, Christian, Republican, right-wing values, whatever that is. I might not necessarily agree with all of those things, but I respect your right to have them. And at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, we agree to disagree. But that's me just being, like a reasonable person who goes out into the world and acknowledges the fact that, guess what? Not only are people not going to agree with me about most things or a lot of things, there's no one human being on the planet, including my absolute closest friends or even my mom or even like I mentioned Dave Rubin before. Like, I love Dave Rubin. He's the guy who probably I see eye to eye with the most on pretty much every issue across the board. But even him, there are going to be things that he and I disagree with. So I think people need to wake up to this fact of, you're never going to find somebody in the world who sees things exactly as you see them. And I would go one step further to say, even if you look within yourself, I don't even think you are going to completely agree with everything that you believe right now. And by that, I mean, a year from now, I bet you there's a good chance, especially if you're an open-minded person who's willing to take in new information and evolve and adapt and grow and all that, there's a good chance the you a year from now won't even agree with the you today. And certainly for myself, but I bet you for a lot of you as well, again, who are open-minded people, the you from 10 years ago, you might look back on it now and be like, wow, what the hell was I thinking back then? Like I was so wrong. I was so off about everything 10 years ago. So you see where I'm going with this? Like, you can't expect to agree on everything with everybody. Like, you need to accept that and learn to live with each other and agree to disagree. And I guess certain people have like a hot button issue that they're like, well, no, that's a deal breaker for me. If somebody is pro-life, I just cannot associate with that person. I can't stand them, and they can go to hell. Or if somebody is all about global warming and they think that's the number one crisis in the world, then I can't deal with that person. Like, that's it. I just won't even talk to that person. It's like, so whether it's coming from the left or the right, there's just this mentality of like, obviously we're getting more and more partisan in our politics, or we're getting more and more divided. And there's just so much animosity between the left and the right. I don't know, but as somebody who has been left and right before, and I find myself in the middle, and I just try to be a reasonable person, I feel like it's almost like it's our job or our responsibility as people in the middle who are just reasonably minded people to be what, I don't want to say saves this country, but who brings us through this madness, And if we can somehow speak to both the left and the right and bring people together, which is why I think Dave Rubin does a good job of this, and I try to be one of those people as well. And I've had guests on the podcast before who I completely disagree with, and I've had other ones who I agree with a lot more. But I would like this to be a place where people come together and can openly exchange ideas, even if I don't agree with them at all. And I think that's a good place to start. It's just like open dialogue. But all that being said, you may have noticed in recent weeks, like my episode with my friend Ryan and my episode with my friend JR, they both seemed a little bit more optimistic about the future than me. And what can I say? Even my episode with my friend Christina Weber, she seems really optimistic about relationships and men and women and all this stuff and love. And I kind of realized in that episode how pessimistic and skeptical I am on that front. And it caused me reason for pause and reflection of like, okay, well, maybe I need to be more optimistic about certain things happening in my own life, and love and romance and all that stuff. And maybe I shouldn't give up on that idea and just be a solitary hermit. I don't know. I feel like in recent years, my life my life choices have led me to having a philosophy of like, let me figure out what works for me first. Not even what I want, like a pie in the sky kind of thing, or what's my dream or my fantasy or anything like that, but really literally just what works, given the nature of the way the world is and how people are and politics and all this bullshit out there. Factoring that all in, how can I best create an operational strategy that achieves some positive results in my own life that I feel content enough to move forward with, right? That's kind of been my MO for a while. And back to this topic of Titanic is I feel like I've been feeling uneasy lately, and I guess for a while throughout this whole pandemic, because I just feel like, look, if society is going to shit and I'm part of society, it's like I'm tied with the fate of society. So if society's going down, that means I'm also going down. So I can't fully remove myself from society it's hard for me to just blot out the news and all of this shit going down outside, because I'm like, it does affect me. Ultimately, it will affect me. And I sit here and I ponder what to do about that. And part of me seriously has thought about like, okay, well, maybe one of the solutions, again, when I go back to how my MO is about just figuring out what works, given the nature of everything out there happening, this one solution I've kind of considered is like, okay, maybe it's best for me to begin the process of removing myself from society. And in some ways, I've already begun doing that.
Copy, Gold Leader. I'm already on my way out.
Not really by my choice. I just feel like the default for 2020 with the lockdown measures and quarantine life and all that stuff, the default has just been for me to remove myself from society. I'm basically only involved online with the podcast and posting on introversion.com and posting on social media and Facebook and Twitter and all that, which I feel like, side note, this will be a whole nother specific episode, but I watched The Social Dilemma documentary on Netflix a few weeks ago, and it hit home. It hit home for me. Not necessarily that they were telling me anything I didn't kind of already suspect, but it just really hit home and was a sort of a punch in the face reminder of what social media is and how toxic it is, and how I think I'd be better in my life with less social media. And that means less consumption of it, but it also means me posting less on it. And, I'm not out there anymore this year. I haven't been on a date. Oh, this goes even before the pandemic, but with the MGTOW philosophy I adopted last year back in March, I haven't been on a date since. And I don't even necessarily regret it, because when I look at the girls in the apps who like me and I look at that's what's there, I'm like, I'm not really excited about it. I'm not really excited about the prospects. So, if again, as I mentioned, my life is about figuring out a strategy that works for me. When my options are go out with girls on dates and in theory pay for these dates for these girls, like girls who I have tepid interest in, who I'm not really that physically attracted to, I'm not that really interested in who they are, what they have to say. They're not that creative or inspiring or thought-provoking to me, or, just curious, or, all the things that I would be attracted to in a girl or a person in general. If they don't possess those qualities, I'm like, why do I want to bother? Why? Is it the sexual urge that men have and they just want to sleep around and whatever? I'm like, nah. I don't think that urge has ever been really all that strong with me, but also the older I get, I find myself less ruled by that. I would rather spend my time productively than spend time in some sort of romantic pursuit with somebody who I know deep down I'm really not all that interested in, either physically or in terms of their personality or whatever. So yeah, just not worth pursuing. So yeah, so the dating thing is out. And my point here was that I've already been removing myself from society. Now, the thing is, though, is that I'm still very much located within society because I'm right here in the middle of Philadelphia. So I live in a great spot, a great neighborhood, and there's bars and restaurants and nightlife and shopping, and there's concerts and stuff to do all around me. I picked a good spot in Philly. But the thing about 2020, and this isn't just for me, this is for basically anybody living in a city in the year 2020 in America. City life has taken a big hit in terms of quality of life, and it's something I've really been questioning lately, is like, what is the point of even living in a city anymore? And going back to my mom advising me earlier this year, I think a lot of the tonality of what she was saying to me was like, just weather the storm, right? Just right now, just keep your head down and work on your stuff and make it through this stint for this next couple of weeks until the gyms open up, and then you can get back going into a rhythm and you can get back out there. And I'm like, I did that for months and the gym never reopened. And that's just one example of like, this has been dragging on forever. And when I look at the data and the numbers is coming out now with CDC, and even WHO is coming out and reversing their policies and saying, and reversing their recommendations, saying basically, no, the lockdowns are a bad idea and society should not be locking down because it's causing more adverse effects on people's lives and businesses and everything, So now everything is getting kind of flipped, and but at the same time, I saw a poll the other day that was like 96% of Democratic women polled were feeling like we're not okay to reopen society with no restrictions. And I think it was like slightly less, like 93 or 94% of Democratic men felt the same way. Whereas with Republicans who were polled, it was the antithesis. They were more like, no, let's reopen society, let's move on with life. That's more important. So when I saw that, I was like, wow, and even just last night, I went out to Quizzo, which for those of you who didn't know, it's basically bar trivia. And that was my one regular social interaction every week that I had in my life last year in 2019 when I moved to Philly, and the early part of 2020. Once a week. would just go to the bar, meet up with a couple of friends, and we do bar trivia, and it was fun. It was nothing mind blowing. It was nothing super exciting. It was just kind of a nice little social gathering and a little bit of fun, and you have a drink and eat out, and that's it. And as an introvert, that's kind of all I really needed, was just that small little connection with the outside world, that small little gathering of friends, and just something to get me out of the apartment every week, at least once, and around other people. And I had that. And then that went away when the pandemic hit, basically mid to late March. And guess what? So Quizzo has restarted, and me and a couple of the friends who used to go, we decided to go to it last night. And we went. It was outdoors, and everything was kind of spaced out. And the host of the Quizzo, this guy, I don't even know his name, but he's a good guy. He's funny. He's cool. He's chill. He was like, "Oh, it's so good to see you guys. It's so good to see y'all back here." And it was like, "Yeah, cool. It's so good to see him back too." And so the standard format of Quizzo is basically you do 2 rounds of 10 questions, and then there's like a picture round, and then there's a third round. So all in all, there's like 4 rounds. And because there was no intercom system, and the guy wasn't able to just speak once into the mic and read off each question to every table involved, he literally had to go walk around each table and ask them the trivia question. Here's question number 2. He tells this table, and then he walks around to the next table. Here's question number 2. And then he does the same thing in the next table and question number 2. And it just really slowed down the process so much that it was just kind of dragging on, and it didn't look like we were going to win anyways. So after the second round, my friends who I was with, they were just like, "Hey, you want to just bounce? Let's just bounce. This is kind of lame." And I wouldn't have mind staying to finish all 4 rounds, but at the same time, I didn't really care that much either way. So I was like, sure, yeah, whatever. So we left. And we didn't even say bye to the host, the cool guy I was talking to, who was so glad to see us, because I didn't even see where he was at the time. He might have been inside and while he was scoring the last round results or something. So the whole point I'm getting here is that it was just a very flat experience, and I personally don't really care to go back again until it reopens in the proper way, which is that we are all inside, many groups and tables, and there's the one microphone, and the way it used to be, the way it's supposed to be, because that was at least a little bit fun, and last night was really not fun at all. It's like all the fun was sucked out of it. And I'll give you another example. My friend Aaron came down from New Jersey to visit, I guess about a month or 2 ago, and he just came up for the night. We went out to have dinner, and then he just took off. And we went out to this outdoor eating area right down the street from where I live. And this big black bouncer guy at the entryway was basically briefing us on the protocol. And he was just like, "All right, here's the deal. We're gonna use some Purell. You're gonna wipe your hands here right when we walk in. You're gonna have your face mask on, of course, the whole time. We're gonna usher you over to that table way over there in the corner. Keep your mask on the whole time. If you have to stand up, put your mask on. Oh, sorry. As long as you're seated in your table, you can take your mask off. But as soon as you stand up to get up and do anything, put your mask back on. And what you're going to want to do is, we got 2 separate lines over here, one for food, one for drinks. Again, keep your mask on the whole time. Order your stuff here. There's no more menus. You got to use your smartphone to take a picture of it, and the menu will come up on your phone. There'll be no waiter service or anything like that." He's just like, and it was like, "Oh yeah, if you want to use the bathroom, speak to somebody working here or myself, and we'll, give you a pass to go to the bathroom. Of course, you gotta have your mask on the whole time, keep it inside." And just like, the whole point of all of this, like his briefing was basically was to keep us safe, right? From dying, right? This disease is not killing more than 1% of the people, and it's very vulnerable people who are dying, very old and sick people who are dying of this thing. Forgetting about all that, I'm not even going to go into that, but the point is, we're having to take all these measures in the name of safety, when really, I personally feel like I don't really have much to fear. But the net result of it is, we go back to our table, we sit in the corner, and Aaron and I are just sitting there chit-chatting, and we see some people at other tables, and like, there will be no social interaction. There will be no meeting of new people. There will be no chit chat with other patrons at the establishment. There will be no flirting. There will certainly not be any hooking up or anything like that. I mean, it's like nothing is going to happen tonight here except me having a conversation with my friend, and that's it. And when I stopped and thought about it, by the time I got home, and then not to mention the fact that, you're kind of overpaying for food. And you think about it, when you pay to go out, right? You're paying for the food, you're paying for the drinks, fine. But you're also paying for the ambiance. You're paying for the experience of quote unquote going out. And because I actually have a nice kitchen now and I've started cooking more, I actually eat quite well at home. And I pay less money than I do when I go out. Plus, I don't have to wear a mask. I have really cool lighting in my place, good furniture. It's very comfortable, perfect temperature, no bugs. It's just like super chill, super nice. And that's why when I've had a couple friends to visit, whether it was Tommy coming down to visit or my cousin Praveen or Aaron at this time, like I'm just like, dude, we may as well just hang out in my apartment, because going out is more of a drag than just staying in. And like I was about to say, like the net result of going out with Aaron to go out to eat, I'm like, this fucking sucks. There's nothing about this that's quote unquote fun for me. And, I said to somebody yesterday, I'm like, when do you think this will just magically end? Like, can you even imagine the point in time or how that is going to happen where they just say, oh, everybody, guess what? You don't have to wear masks anymore. You can eat full capacity restaurants. You can talk with people. You don't have to social distance. Everything's fine now.
Everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you.
It's life is normal. You can go talk to a girl, talk to a guy, whatever, shake hands. You can hug, all these things. And I'm like, I don't see that happening. And the thing about habits, and I don't know, for those of you who know this, I think it was like Tim Ferriss, but somebody said how the key to establishing a good habit, whether it's learning a language, studying a language every day, or not drinking alcohol, or whatever the habit is, whatever good thing you want to do. I think it was either like 30 days or 60 days or something like that. But if you form a habit and you do the same thing for 30 or 60 days or whatever that magic number was, that's how you forge a new habit. Now that's for forming good habits. But basically, if you think about it, it's the same for bad habits. If you get into a bad habit of doing something for 30 to 60 days, that bad habit is with you now. It becomes part of your MO of how you go about your day. It just becomes ingrained into you and how you function. And when I think about this whole mask wearing thing and the social distancing thing and the no handshaking thing and the Purell thing and all this stuff, it's like, even if best case scenario, the government or CNN or whoever just announces, hey, everybody, everything's fine now. You don't have to wear masks anymore. You don't have to social distance anymore. You can go about your life like normal. Go ahead, knock yourselves out. Even if that happens, which I don't even think that's going to happen, but even if that were to happen, there would still be a period of time, and I don't know how long that period of time would be, because it takes time for people to break habits. It takes longer for certain people to break habits after this announcement is made. And let's say you're out at a bar and you're a single guy and you go up to say hi to some girl at the bar. How are you not going to flinch? Or at least for me, I would be going in with this expectation of she's going to be like, please stay away from me. Please keep your distance. I really don't want to talk to you. I don't know who you are. Like whatever that thing is. It's like, I think a lot of women don't really get this. It's like the whole thing about like guys are the ones who have to go approach women. And it sucks a lot of the times. It sucks to be rejected. And it's something that guys just have to deal with and whatever. It's just kind of ingrained into society that's just the way it is. But I don't like being rejected. And on top of that, with all the MGTOW stuff and the fact that I'm really just not attracted to most women anymore in general, not just physically, but just kind of who they are and all that stuff. But I'm not really going to be going up and flirting and talking to anybody or getting close with anybody, and I think there's going to be a lot of that. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens and how it plays out in terms of this transition back to normal life. But I've also heard Fauci say,
I don't think we'd should ever shake hands ever again, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, there's not going to be handshakes anymore. No more handshakes. Oh yeah, like this is the new normal that we have to accept in order to stay alive or some shit, right? And I don't know, I hope the good guys win out over that kind of mentality. Of course, I call them the good guys, but then so many of my friends, I don't know, 80 to 90% of my friends think that Fauci is the good guys. And the people who out there who want to have handshakes and hugs and no masks and return to life as normal, that we're the bad guys. You know, so it's just like this whole fucked up paradigm. But to bring it full circle here and back to this idea of the Titanic is, I'm talking about society here. I'm talking about societal expectations. I'm talking about people and what their views are for what society should be. And I'm afraid that I don't like the direction society is heading in. Like, I've been a germaphobe my whole life, but I feel like what's happening this year is not germophobia, like a standard germophobia. It's outright paranoia. And the older I get, I feel less paranoid about certain risks, like walking around on the street without a mask on by yourself. I weigh the pros and cons and the risks. And for me, the satisfaction, pleasure, and the health and the freedom I have of walking around outside on a nice day without a mask on, to me, far outweighs the possible risk of me getting COVID-19 and dying or transmitting it to somebody. Because I think that's what I've heard a lot of people say about the mask. It's not about it protecting you from getting sick. It's about preventing you from getting others sick. But I'm like, okay, first of all, I'm not even sick. So there's that. But even if I had COVID in my system at some point, there would be a limited period of time where I was actually infectious, even without symptoms. So you're saying for that brief window of time, whether it's 3 days or a week or whatever, that I should basically cancel my entire year of human experience for the possibility that I might transmit the virus in a brief 6-day window or 14-day window. I might transmit this virus to other people who also might get it. They might transmit it or not, but it's like we've been living our entire lifetime for generations with people having infectious diseases walking around. People walk around with a cold. People walk around with sexually transmitted diseases and herpes, and they drink out of glasses. And then you go to a bar or a restaurant and you drink out of the same glass that somebody else drank out of, and you put your trust and your faith in the fact that, the glasses were washed, or they were probably washed, so it's probably clean enough for me to drink from and not get herpes. We sit down on toilet seats with people with other diseases, We go to work and we go to hospitals. We go to dentist's office, and people get sick all the time. It's part of life. We don't cancel life every year when flu season rolls around. Ideally, I would say, okay, which is generally my policy, which is, look, if you're sick, stay home, And I used to hate it when I'm at the office and I have a sick coworker next to me, and I'm like, God damn it, dude, why didn't you stay home? Just stay home. Now you're going to get me sick. You're going to get everybody else at the office sick. Take a couple of days off, get well, then come back to work. That's typically how I like to operate. And yes, I get it. Like, a lot of times people don't have that option and they just have to go to work in order to keep a paycheck. They don't have vacation days or sick days and all that stuff. And that's a whole nother separate problem, but just basic precautions. But the point is that we live with sickness all around us in life, not only in our lives, but like generation after generation after generation for hundreds of years, for thousands of years, like back to the dawn of man. Like, our immune systems have evolved and they're pretty good at keeping us alive, up to the year 2020. And do people all of a sudden think that, if you don't wear a mask, all of a sudden now you're going to get sick and die? Humanity is all going to just die out now because of COVID-19? Really? Is that what you think? Have you not looked at the data and see that you have a 99.99999% chance of survival, if you're under the age of 50? And even if you're in the danger zone of being above age 60 or 70, your chances of surviving it, if you even get it, are still like 95%. And this isn't me making shit up. You can go look it up for yourself. Look at the CDC data. You can even look at the infection rates that have been released by WHO. It's saying basically the same thing, which is probably why they're starting to change their story. But it is what it is. I know I keep getting sucked into these COVID rants or whatever, but it's not really irrelevant, though. It is relevant to what I'm talking about here with the Titanic thing, because I just feel like in a lot of ways, I don't like the way society's going. I don't like how people think, or rather the fact that they don't really think. And they basically just turn on the TV, and what are they told to do? Oh, okay. I'm told to stay inside my home for 8 months. Okay. I'll just stay inside my home for 8 months because you told me to. Okay. That's not how I operate. And I could go off on multiple tangents here. I could talk about the reasons why I think that way, but I feel like I've sort of been lied to a lot in my life, having grown up in the church and with Christianity and all that stuff. And for me to realize a lot of it is bollocks. A lot of it is just manipulative shit that really fucks with your head and always gets you to doubt yourself and question yourself and not believe in yourself, and instead do as you're told. Obey the scripture, obey God, trust in the authorities, trust in the Bible being the word of God, all those kind of things. When I've been through that experience, it causes me to be very skeptical of any institution or anything that comes along and tells me, no, this is what you need to do. You need to do this or else. I'm not cool with a lot of those threats. This is also why I believe in limited government. It's like, look, let people live their lives the way they want to live their lives. But I just feel like I don't know about city life anymore. Just to bring it full circle here, I don't know about city life. I really don't see the value of living in a city right now. I'm walking around on Thursday night last night, and so many places are closed, or there's barely anybody inside, or there's a few people outside. And I'm just like, what is the point of this? So more and more and more, I'm really feeling like, and like I mentioned, I've already been on this path, but I feel like continuing this path of unplugging from society. Whether it means going and having a small private house out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, I think so. That's just probably the most realistic thing for me in the next year or two. But even beyond that, I don't even know about living in America anymore. I just feel like when travel bans get lifted and all this stuff, like I think I will want to start venturing out, and, whether it's Germany or the Netherlands or Spain, or I've never thought about living in South America, but you never know. I wouldn't mind traveling and visiting and seeing how a place is, or obviously Japan, which I've always talked about and thought about for a while. But wherever it is, I just feel like I feel this ship, and maybe this is me being too pessimistic. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm not on the Titanic and that this ship is not going down. But when I see so many things going wrong in society on so many levels, whether from the left or the right, it's hard for me, and this is the point of this episode really, is it's hard for me to focus on just killing it, like doing my own thing, being really creative and artistic and productive, and when I'm on a freaking Titanic ship that's going down. I can't separate myself from the Titanic ship going down unless I literally get off the Titanic ship, because as an individual, like I said earlier, I can do a lot to change the course of my own personal life. Like, fine, okay, if I'm on the Titanic ship, I can choose to go walk to the other side of the ship, or I can choose to do whatever I want on the ship, but I'm on the ship, and the ship is not going to change course based on my whims, right? Or what I want. So I'm out of control of the ship that I'm on. But yet it's the ship that ultimately controls my destiny, because if the ship goes down, then I go down. You see what I'm saying? So this is kind of the point, and this is the specific metaphor that I wanted to discuss today. And I know I've danced all around on little tangents here and there, but I think it's good because all these tangents are actually relevant to this main Titanic metaphor that I was bringing up. So I hope that all made sense. I think this was pretty clear, but if you have questions and or if you have thoughts, do you have similar feelings about you don't like the way society's going? I mean, are you freaked out if Trump gets reelected and you think, I always hear this every election. I heard it back in the Bush days. And certainly in 2016, I heard so many of my friends say, okay, if Trump gets elected, I'm moving to Canada, right? So obviously, I don't think any of my friends actually did that, but that was the rhetoric, right? I do wonder how you all feel out there if Biden gets elected or if Trump gets elected. Do you feel like no matter what, we're heading in the wrong direction as a country? Do you feel like jettisoning, you know? Or do you feel like, whatever happens to society, whatever, society will carry on, and whether I like it or not, but I can still do my own thing and have my own prosperity, my own personal prosperity, right? Do you feel that way? I'm struggling in this space, and I think I would like to tap into a little bit of the optimism of my friend JR recently and my friend Ryan, who are basically saying like, you know, whatever happens, I'll be all right. And I think society will be all right. You know, basically alluding to this idea that the Titanic ship is not going down. It's going to keep sailing. So don't freak out, right? I want to believe that. And maybe that's good for me to surround myself with people who think like that, because maybe that's a good influence on me, that I don't incorrectly get this idea that the Titanic is sinking. Because maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a feeling. Maybe just a feeling that I need to let go of, you know? And yeah, maybe my mom's advice was great all along. And I think I want to believe in that. And I think, as I've mentioned before, heading into this final 2 months of 2020, I do want to get a lot accomplished this year. And that means deciding on my J Caslow logo, which if you're following me on Instagram at J Caslow, or, you know, you'll see all my logo explorations, and there's that. And I've been working on my new .com site, and I want to work on my new reel and a new portfolio site. And I want to get all of this done literally by December 31st, you know, before we enter into 2021. And it's a lot. It's a lot for me to get done. And none of this has anything to do with the election or any of the craziness happening out there in the world. So I obviously know my best path moving forward in the next couple of months is to do just this, is to focus on my own thing, whether I'm on a sinking Titanic ship or not, right? Because what are you going to do? What are you going to do, right? If the Titanic really is sinking and you're on it, you're fucked, right? But hey, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Right? But we got to weigh these possibilities, you know, and timelines. I don't know, part of me is thinking, even if the Titanic is going down, I'm thinking, well, maybe it'll be a slow, gradual enough process where if I'm able to put the pieces together and observe certain things happening, that I'm like, okay, you know what? It's time for me to quietly slip over to the dinghy, to the escape boat or whatever, and get off this ship and just drift away to safety somewhere else. Yeah. So I'll leave it at that. So yeah, I mean, maybe that's the best way to go, is just sort of keep your head down, focus on your own thing, but at the same time, keep just enough awareness of what's going on out there in the world so that you can be vigilant, so that you can see the signs of like, all right, the Titanic is not sinking already, but it's not looking good and it's going to sink. And therefore you need to start taking some protective measures, some survival measures to get off the Titanic and go, you know, escape to safety, whatever that means. You know, whether it means moving out to the sticks or literally leaving the country, I don't know. But yeah, so we'll leave it at that. This turned out to not be the little 20-minute episodette that I thought maybe it would be at first. But yeah, I just felt compelled to get that metaphor out there. If you have thoughts about the Titanic metaphor, and do you feel like America is a sinking ship, or do you feel like things are fine and getting better? You know, how does it relate to your own personal life? You know, are you able to separate the two? What's happening in your life versus what's happening in society? I don't know. This is a very key issue that I've been struggling with this entire year. And I wonder if you're also struggling with that out there. I'm curious. So yeah, if you have any thoughts you want to share, feel free to email me at podcast@introversion.com. Would love to hear from you. And if you're interested, I could read your emails on an upcoming episode as a follow-up. At some point, I'd actually like to get a phone number set up so that you can call in. I think that would be kind of cool. I've seen a couple podcasts do that where people can leave voicemail feedback. And then I would just basically play the messages you leave me. I'd play them on the podcast. I think that'd be really interesting, because I would definitely love the Introversion Podcast to be, you know, a little bit more interactive. I think that'd be really interesting. Because I would definitely love the Introversion Podcast to be, you know, a little bit more interactive. I think that'd be really interesting. Because I would definitely love the Introversion Podcast to be, you know, a little bit more interactive. I think that'd be really interesting. Because I would definitely love the Introversion Podcast to be, It's already somewhat interactive, but I would love it to be even more interactive. You know, I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love for this to be like a back and forth, you know, not just a one-way street all the time of just me putting my voice out there, but also hearing back from you. I'd love that. But all that being said, this is the Titanic episode. I hope this ship is not sinking. Let's all hope this ship is not sinking, but we'll see what happens, right? We'll see what happens. Today's episode is brought to you by
Britannia! Gambling with all the glitz and glamour of the British Isles. And best of all, the waitresses and showgirls are all real Brits.
Hey, you. Yes, you. I just wanted to say thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to hear more, hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're currently listening on. That way you can obviously get notified as soon as new episodes arrive. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star rating and consider writing a brief review. It just takes a second, and it really helps in order to get this podcast ranking higher so that more people can discover it. And the better this podcast is doing, the more prominent guests we can get on the show, and also the more time I can devote to it, which means more episodes and better episodes. And speaking of better episodes, what would you like to see more of on the show? Are there specific topics you'd love to see covered? Do you have thoughts of your own on the subjects discussed today? I'd love to hear from you. Just shoot an email to podcast@introversion.com, or you can reach out to me on social media. I'm Jay Caslow on pretty much every platform, Twitter, Instagram, and the rest. And last but not least, if you've been enjoying listening to the podcast and also checking out the daily blog at introversion.com, I invite you to visit patreon.com/introversion, where you can become an official Introversion patron for as little as $3 a month. That's literally 10 cents a day. Anyway, just consider it. Otherwise, just click like, share this podcast with friends and family who you think would enjoy it. It's 2020, so be safe out there, and yet go live your life. I know that's kind of a paradox, but we'll figure this out one way or another. Anyway, have a good one. Until next time.